Exposed, 12 sinister foreign vacation tales that will haunt you, terrifying secrets revealed. The sun had just set over Maplewood, casting eerie shadows that twisted across the quiet streets, but Claire felt anything but peace. The bright homes, once so inviting, now loomed like dark giants. Whispers floated on the warm summer breeze, chilling her spine. Evans had returned home frightened again, something about a friend in the shadows, and her heart raced at the thought. A mother knows instinctively when something is wrong. And as she opened the faded travel journal that belonged to her late husband, that instinct only grew stronger. In the dim light, words leapt from the page. Uncanny stories of bizarre cultures and terrifying rituals thudded like a drum in her mind. Disturbing rituals disguised as local traditions. Her hands shook. Her husband's voice echoed in her ears, "Stay alert, Claire, the world is full of good and evil." Panic gripped her heart, so real she could almost feel it choking her. When he had told her tales of his ventures, she thought they were just that, stories. But the accounts of strange disappearances and shadowy figures lurking behind corners sent a chill through her bones. "This can't be," she murmured, but then surface memories rose, the way the accountant smiled too broadly at neighborhood meetings, or how fleeting the kids were at the schoolyard lately, darting in and out like frightened birds. "Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. One evening, that stillness shattered. A knocking at the back door. Quiet at first, timid. Then louder, insistent, as if a desperate soul begged for entry. Sweat beaded on Claire's forehead, and her stomach flipped instinctively. It was late. Evan stood frozen beside her, that pale little face wide-eyed with terror. He whispered something that made her blood run cold. "Mom, my friend is here." A raspy voice came from outside, familiar yet chilling. She froze, heart hammering against her chest. It felt like a sick dream. Claire glanced at the journal, remembering the passage about a neighborhood that masked its malignancy with cheerful faces. The accountant's words slipped through her mind like sand, "We're just looking out for each other." Suddenly, another soft knock, punctuated by a whisper, "Open the door, Claire." The voice sent shivers down her spine. The friendly smile she once returned at community meetings morphed into something grotesque in her memory. Evan's cute innocence shifted to something more, knowing. "Mom, can I let him in? He wants to show me something fun." Everything inside her screamed against it. She could almost hear her husband's warning wrap around her like a noose. "No!" Claire shouted. But her son didn't seem to hear her as he moved, yearning to step into the waiting darkness. What else was hidden behind those sweet smiles of her neighbors? What horror waited in the shadows that her husband seemed to have encountered in those distant lands? As she faced the door, dread squeezing her heart, Claire realized, the world may indeed be more sinister than she ever knew. And there was no turning back now. The handle turned slowly, the sound echoing through the silence of the kitchen like a death knell. Claire's breath hitched in her throat, fear slicing through her like an icy blade. She seized Evan's arm, steadying him, pulling him back from the door, from the temptation of that friendly voice behind the wood. "Stay with me," she whispered fiercely, her grip firm yet urgent. "Mom," Evan pleaded, confusion clouding his innocent brow. "He just wants to play." "No." Those sweet tones were twisting into something sinister. Panic surged through Claire, hot and suffocating, as she crouched to Evan's level. "Evan, that's not your friend. We mustn't open this door." The whispering on the other side persisted, growing more insistent. "Come on, Claire. Don't you want to see what I have for you? It's something special." The soft laugh that followed was like nails scraping against her mind, an invitation that felt like a trap. Had it echoed through her husband's tales? Claire struggled to recall every detail, every word he had shared. The darker truths laid hidden among the laughter and tales of adventure. She began to understand the shapes and stories that no longer seemed like innocent folklore. Suddenly, the knock turned aggressive, a forceful thud that sent her pulse racing 100 times faster. She squeezed her eyes shut, willing the nightmare to vanish, but the harsh reality remained. "Mom, he's getting mad," Evan whimpered, his voice now edged with fear. Rising with a fierce resolve, Claire shook her head. "I don't care, Evan. We need to get away from the door. Why do we have to be scared?" His pure innocence twisted into desperation. "He's just my friend." Tears stung Claire's eyes as she led him away, her heart breaking at the confusion in her son's voice. "Evan, some friends aren't good for us. Some friends want to hurt us." As they moved to the side of the kitchen, the air thickened, colors fading into deeper shades of gray. She clutched at the oak kitchen counter, its familiar texture grounding her in that moment. But the kitchen lights began to flicker, shadows dancing menacingly around them, tightening the space like a noose. Your neighbors. She remembered the journal, her husband's stories, all the strange faces and whispers from community gatherings. Not trusting her instincts, she leaped towards the back window, yanking the curtain aside. The streetlights outside flickered too, but more unnervingly, the outline of figures lingered beyond the glow. They were there, watching, unblinking, arms by their sides. Some turned their faces just slightly, revealing the unnatural curves of their smiles. "Mom, I don't like this." Evan's voice trembled, pulling on her sleeve. "Neither do I, sweetheart. We need to hide." Just as she turned, the front door loudly creaked open. It hadn't been Evan or her, it was as if an unseen force had pushed its way inside, releasing a draft that sent a shiver down her spine. From the hallway, the familiar voice echoed again, softer now, dripping with persuasion. "Claire, I'm home." Fingers curled tightly around her son's wrist, Claire's heart raced. She felt trapped. The spiraling panic twisted her stomach. Where could they possibly escape? "Mom, I can see him." Evan pointed with wide eyes, thrill breaking through his terror. "He's my friend. He's coming." Screaming inwardly, Claire whipped around, her pulse quickening as she braced herself for the unspeakable. Voices multiplied in an ominous chorus echoing through the chill. "Let us in." Could this all be a form of darkness unleashed? Or had they never really left, merely hidden behind their masks? With the walls closing in, Claire knew they were running out of time. What lay waiting behind that door? She had to protect Evan, but at this moment, it was clear, something had awakened in Maplewood. As the lights flickered one last time, her vision blurred, flooded with uncertainty, her instincts screamed for survival. What are they? But the answer slipped away, consumed by the shadows engulfing their reality. What happened next would determine if they would make it through this night. Would they find safety in the very place that once welcomed them with open arms, or would the masks fall, revealing the sinister truths? The darkness was swelling, and it was clear that this wasn't just a mere neighborhood gathering anymore. Claire's breath quickened, the creeping dread tightening its grip around her chest. She couldn't lock her gaze on Evan, whose youthful excitement pierced through her anxiety. "He's coming, Mom. I think he has a surprise." Her heart stuttered. How could he feel joy where she felt terror? The corridor darkened, shadows flickering like angry phantoms licking the walls. Time seemed suspended. She darted a glance at the door, which stood ajar, ominous and inviting as an open maw. "Evan, listen to me," she hissed, urgency clutching her voice. "We need to go. Now." But his eyes shone bright with innocence, and innocence shielding him from the danger that loomed. "But Mom, he said he'd make us happy." "Happy? No." Claire was frantic now, pulling Evan back as he took a small step closer to that cursed threshold. The strident call of the voice flowed through the house like an unseen serpent slithering, coiling, wrapping around her heart in a chilling embrace. "He wants to show you something, Claire." A surprise for both of you. Even the walls seemed to pulse with that dark invitation, throbbing in response to her mounting panic. Claire could feel she was teetering on the edge of something profoundly wrong. "We need the back door," she urged, her voice breaking, tension tightening around her throat. As they turned away, the whispering intensified into a guttural chant, more voices, layered, echoing through the walls. It merged into a horrifying symphony of persuasion and menace. "Let us in, dear Claire, don't be afraid." Suddenly, they were surrounded by darkness, the flickering light surrendering to complete blackness. Claire grasped Evan's hand tighter, feeling the warmth of his tiny fingers slip slightly against her trembling palm. "Mom," Evan whimpered, his voice trembling, pure fear dripping from his words. She was breathless, the words like hushed prayers. "Stay close." They moved stealthily toward the back door, Claire's heart drumming a frantic beat against her ribcage. Could they make it out? Was there truly a safe path from this enveloping horror? An icy finger traced the nape of her neck, and she fought the urge to scream. As if sensing their escape, a heavy thud emanated from the hallway. She froze, eyes darting back, panic electrifying her veins. Thick footsteps treading deliberately, lingering in the gloom. The familiarity twisted like a knife. "Evan." Her whisper was 1,000 times louder than the pounding heart in her chest. Panic washed over her. "We need to move," but Evan stood frozen, eyes wide, fixated on the darkened hallway. "Mom," he asked. Just the blinding light of a lantern flickered into existence at the end of the corridor, a silhouette framed in its glow. A face emerged, a visage that was both known and terrifying. Like a twisted reflection of a beloved memory, manipulating their trust. "You shouldn't run from friends, Claire. It's rude." Claire's stomach churned, nausea rising with the real terror behind those words. With every step, the figure loomed closer, illuminated by an ethereal glow, a spectral presence forged from their worst nightmares. "Mom, it's him." Evan pointed, wonder laced with fear. "Get back!" she screamed, pulling him behind the kitchen island. But before she could formulate a plan, the voice wrapped around them, its sound not just in their ears, but inside their heads, echoing dark thoughts. "You can't hide. Everyone wants to play with you, dear Claire." Her thoughts spun chaotically. What was it that her husband had read? The faces of their neighbors posted on a corkboard of dread, their smiles now grotesque in the light of this unfolding nightmare. "No, no, Mom. Play with us." Evan squealed, excitement buzzing in his voice, completely unaware of the terror unfolding. With adrenaline surging, Claire wrestled her son close. "Stop. We have to go." But with a dreadful crash, the kitchen door burst open. Desperation invaded her chest as a chorus of voices flooded in, filling the space with a malevolent thrum. The air became heavy, electric with undeniable malice. And just as quickly as it began, the light sputtered into slow clarity. A pocket of silence thickened around them, the hush was more forbidding than the noise had been. "Let us play," the voices breathed, suddenly softening, dripping with seduction. In that moment, Claire realized the warmth she had felt was not safety, but a siren's call, luring them deeper into the trap. They had to fight, but how? As the house pulsed with darkness, Claire faced an impossible choice between protecting Evan or uncovering the truth behind this sinister gathering. Would their innocence shatter, revealing the horror lurking beneath the surface? And with that haunting realization, their fate hung in the balance, suspended by the fragile thread of hope entwined with terror. How far would they go to escape the clutches of their so-called friends? Evan's laughter pierced through Claire's haze of fear, a jarring contrast to the sinister whispers that wrapped around them. "Mom, we can play," he insisted, his eyes wide with untainted excitement, oblivious to the danger lurking in each shadow. Claire's heart sank, she could not let him go. "Evan, no. You have to listen to me." Panic edged her voice higher. She pulled him tighter against her, blinding dread coursing through her. The gestures of playful innocence felt grotesque in this oppressive atmosphere. From the darkened hallway, the figure stepped forward, illuminating more of its distorted form. It was a mockery of familiarity, a thing twisted by palpable malevolence. The voice dripped from it like honey. "Come on, Claire. You can't resist. We're all here for you." Frantic, she scanned the room. The front door loomed behind the figure, a potential escape, and at the same time, it seemed tethered to an eternal threat. "Please, Evan," she begged, hoping to pull him from the pull of this wicked charm. "Don't you see it's happening again? He'll take you too." The figure shrieked laughter, echoing through the house like the flapping of moth wings in a dark room. "Take him? No. I want to show you both the fun we can have together." The words replayed in her mind like a cursed lullaby. It promised fun but masked malevolence. Something dark and shadowy thrummed beneath its surface. A rising tide of panic swallowed her as she remembered the faces on that corkboard. Those vibrant smiles were nothing compared to the malevolence now standing before them. "Mom, I want to play," Evan whined, his voice whimpering. "No!" Claire screamed. She had to act. She released his hand, heart racing as she dove toward the back door, breaking the grasp of terror. "Stop her!" The figure hissed, anger lacing through the honeyed voice. Shadows ripped from the corners of the room, lunging after her, tendrils of darkness grasping for her, eager to pull her back into despair. "Evan, come!" she shouted as she felt the first icy fingers of those shadows claw at her leg. She kicked back, feeling the chill scratch her skin. Evan hesitated, and in that second, Claire turned to face him, desperation washing over her. "Evan, please!" But he stood there, frozen again, eyes glazed over, entranced by the figure. "Mom, it's just a game. I want to play the game." Everything within Claire screamed to rescue him. The urge to grab him, to pull him into safety, was tugged by the weight of uncertainty. She felt the shadows curling around her, their texture cold and slick, pulling her back into the house's dark heart. "No, sweetheart. You're wrong. It is not a game. Join us." The figure snarled, the light around it flickering as if it was feeding off the fear swirling in the air. Claire pulled herself back, struggling against the shadows wrapping around her legs like chains. She had fueled her way to that back door, but it felt miles away, crawling further with each step forward. Suddenly, the voices swelled, probing, demanding, an inescapable force drawing Claire to despair. "Don't leave us, Claire. We are family." With terror screaming in her chest, Claire made a decision. She released the grappling shadows and lunged towards Evan. Ignoring the peril, she shouted with every ounce of strength she had, "Evan, you have to fight it. You have to choose me over this horror." In that moment of pure desperation, something flickered in Evan's eyes, a spark of recognition. But the figure roared, a sound that rattled the very foundations of the house. "You're making a mistake, dear sister. You don't know what it is you're doing." A gust of wind swept through the room, the lights flickering back ominously, revealing fleeting glimpses of horrifying faces within the darkness. The smiles turned to snarl like jagged teeth. "Evan!" Claire urged, blood pounding in her ears. "Come back to me. We can get out. We have to go." Something shifted in Evan, a glimmer of awareness breaking through, but with the figure's uproar, the shadows thickened, responding to its call. The house twisted in despair. Would they escape this nightmare, or would it become their eternal prison? Just as her fingers grazed Evan's arm, the figure lunged forward, its eyes flashing in the dim light. "No!" Claire screamed, and the darkness swallowed her words. Would Evan take the last step towards her, or were they destined to be devoured by the twisted friendship lurking in the shadows? Claire felt the shadows ripping at her sanity, their icy tendrils tightening around her limbs as she surged towards Evan. It was too late. The figure's dark laughter filled the room like smoke, wrapping around them, squeezing the air from her lungs. Panic clawed at her throat as she fought against the grip of the relentless shadows. "Evan! Fight it!" she yelled, tears blurring her eyes. Even the fear felt palpable, like a living thing, gnawing at her heart, wrapping tighter around hope. The little boy blinked rapidly, eyes flashing as though awakening from a trance. For a brief moment, Claire saw the real Evan again, the boy who loved hide-and-seek, not the one caught in this horrific game. "Mom," he whispered, confusion flooding his voice, but a ripple of rage trembled through the air, echoing from the figure. "No. You are with us now, dear child. You don't want to go back, do you?" With every word it spoke, the shadows surged, more alive than the very air they breathed. Claire could feel the heat of Evan's small body fading under the spell of that seductive voice. Her heart raced furiously, each beat like a drum of war, forcing her to think. She could not lose him, not now, not ever. "Evan, remember your birthday? The cake?" she urged for any fleeting sense of connection. "You wanted to pick the biggest one. We can bake together again. Just like we always do." A flicker of recognition sparked in Evan's dulled gaze, but the figure twisted its mouth into a sinister grin. "Enough of this nonsense, Claire. Let him play. You don't want to ruin the fun." Suddenly, Evan was lost again, his smile twisted, turning into a mask of innocence marred by malevolence. "Mom, I want to play with him," he said slowly, words dripping with a sugary sweetness that chilled Claire. No, she wouldn't let it happen. "You don't understand, Evan. It's a trap." And then she dove for him again. But the shadows tightened their hold, dragging her back, desperate to keep her from reaching him. Each inch felt like pulling against the tide, a force that threatened to drown her in despair. A crack of thunder echoed outside, resonating in the walls, and Claire's heart leapt. Maybe she could use it to buy time. She spun among the shadows, throwing herself toward Evan with unyielding desperation. Just then, the lights flickered and went out completely, plunging them into darkness. "Evan!" she called, but it was swallowed by the oppressive shroud of night. A moment later, a sliver of light returned, revealing the figure standing at the threshold of shadows, looking more grotesque and distorted than ever. "You have doomed yourself, Claire." Its voice rumbled, drawing ever deeper into its unholy grasp. "Listen to me," Claire shouted, her voice emerging from a pit of despair. "You're stronger than this, Evan. Please." But she felt the shadows pinning her, tugging, threatening to tear her apart. Panic surged within her. Would Evan succumb to the lure of the figure? Would he join the faces etched in darkness forever? Just as she lunged, the ground beneath her began to pulse like a beating heart. The air crackled with raw energy, and everything went dark again, more suffocating than before. The sounds of laughter became shrieks, echoing in a cacophony that clawed at her mind, and then there was silence. Claire's breath caught in her throat. She strained forward, desperate for the heartbeat of her son, for anything that felt real. "Evan," she whispered, her voice trembling. The void echoed back her word, drawing it into the depths of nothingness. Suddenly, a chilling realization dawned, a memory fragment that froze her blood. She'd seen this place before. The darkness, the figure, the whispered promises. It wasn't just a game, not just a trap. It was a cycle, a terrible cycle that had ensnared others before, a nightmare that thrived on her fear, and it was waiting for her choice. Then, a flash of light illuminated the shadows. Evan's face flickered back to life, eyes wide and pleading. "Mom!" But before she could respond, a crack of thunder shattered the dark, the house shuddering like a beast. Waking from slumber, and the figure grinned, its eyes glowing. Now, the real game begins. Could Claire break this cycle, or would they both find themselves trapped in this nightmare forever? Darkness enveloped Claire like a suffocating blanket, thick and oppressive. Willing herself to breathe, she fought against the heavy stillness. Where was Evan? Each heartbeat felt like a countdown, every second cruelly stretching into an eternity. "Evan!" she called out, a desperate whisper swallowed by the void. No answer came, only the cold echo of her voice returning, taunting her. The shadows pulsed with an energy that felt alive, writhing like serpents, eager to devour her resolve. "Mom! Help me!" His voice rang clear, sending a jolt of hope through her. She couldn't quite pinpoint where it came from, but it ignited a fire in her chest. Blindly, she stumbled forward, arms outstretched, yearning for the warmth of her son. Suddenly, a flash lit up the cramped darkness. She squinted, desperate to hold on to that fleeting brightness. Just as quickly as it came, it vanished, replaced by the wheezing breaths of the shadows. They laughed, a cacophony of sinister giggles filling the air, echoing through the very bones of the house. "Mommy's here!" Claire shouted, her voice tearing through the cackling. "I'm coming for you, Evan. Stay away from him." The figure's voice boomed, a growl filled with malice. Shadows surged, and at that moment, Claire understood they weren't merely a barrier, they were sentient, hungry. Before she could process it, the ground trembled beneath her feet, rippling like a dark ocean. Claire barely managed to stay upright. Her heart raced uncontrollably as the laughter swelled to a cacophony. She pushed against the oppressive weight of despair threatening to crush her. The lights flickered again, illuminating twisted, elongated faces trapped in the dark. They were indistinct yet menacing, mouths open in perpetual screams. It was a gallery of the lost, a collection of souls claimed by this wretched nightmare. She stumbled back, dread pooling in her stomach. "Don't let them get you, Evan!" Claire cried. In her mind, she pictured him standing before her, innocent and bright, but the shadows shrieked louder, morphing that image into something grotesque, a facade of the boy she loved, now twisted. "Mom," a soft, haunting voice echoed from the depths, dragging her back. "I'm scared." Claire's heart shattered at the sound. "I know, sweetheart, I'm here." With newfound determination, she steadied herself, drawing strength from her love for him. She pivoted and took a step back, plunged deeper into the darkness, and shouted into the shadows, "You can't have him. I won't let you." The figure chuckled, a tone cold and mocking, weaving through the darkness like smoke. "Oh, but we are all just players here. The circle must remain intact, dear Claire." And just as she felt the shadows retreating, something sharp slashed at her shoulder, its cold grip seeping into her flesh. Pain radiated through her, an invasion that made her knees buckle. But she fought against it, refusing to give in. The ground trembled again, and fire erupted from the walls, sudden flames engulfing the room in a furious blaze. Claire's instincts kicked in. She felt alive, not just desperate, fueled with adrenaline, a primal instinct to survive. If the flames could turn the shadows to ash, she would leap into that inferno. "Evan!" she cried, racing against the chaos, eyes scanning every shadow for a glimpse of him. And then she saw him. Evan stood amid the flames, his little body illuminated in an eerie glow, shadows clawing at him. He didn't seem to see her, lost in a trance, eyes blank. "Mom!" His voice was a mere thread, whispering through a storm, and until then, Claire had thought she was the only one fighting. Each shadow that wrapped around him pulled tighter, as if it were squeezing the very essence from his soul. "No! This ends now!" Claire screamed, lunging forward, locking eyes with her son one last time. The laughter turned into sinister howls. Claire could feel the very essence of the entity team around them, the shadow figure forming a grotesque shape, masses of eyes flashing wildly, spinning together, the laughter fading into guttural tones. The game can never end. But Claire was consumed by rage, a desperate urge to protect everything that mattered. The flames roared louder, illuminating their surroundings, exposing the figure for what it truly was, or at least, she hoped it would. In that moment, a chilling realization washed over her. She was not just fighting for Evan's safety, but the very fragments of her own soul. The house shook violently, walls cracking as the energy surged around them. "Time to play for real!" screamed the figure, darkness tightening around them, the last breath before the plunge into chaos. "Evan!" she shouted one last time, stretching her arms wide, flinging herself toward the inferno surrounding them both, and just as she leapt, everything went white. What lay on the other side? Would she find her son, or a new nightmare? Claire stumbled through the blinding white light, disoriented and gasping for air. It felt like stepping through a portal, a sudden shift from the suffocating darkness to an overwhelming brightness. Panic surged in her chest, drowning out the flame-drenched memory of Evan. Was this freedom or a new kind of horror? She landed hard on cold, unforgiving ground. Her palms pressed against the cool surface, and she blinked away spots in her vision. The light began to fade, revealing her surroundings, a dimly lit hallway filled with flickering fluorescent lights, casting a sickly pallor on the peeling walls. There was silence and it was heavy, almost predatory. "Evan!" She cried, but her voice sounded hollow, echoing down the corridor. She stood, heart pounding in her ears, each thud bursting with fear. Where was her son? Had she lost him again? Scents of ash and something metallic filled her nostrils, twisting her stomach, but there was no time to dwell. She moved forward, her feet dragging as she fought against an unseen weight tugging her back, urging her to turn away from the darkness that loomed ahead. Shadows still flickered at the edges, whispering sweet, sinister promises. "Please!" Claire shouted into the nothingness, her voice rasping. "Don't take him!" The air thickened, and from the corner of her eye, she caught a movement. It was a flicker, a shadow darting just beyond her peripheral vision. Frantic, she whipped around, only to find nothing but cold air and remnants of the nightmare she narrowly escaped. Suddenly, the fluorescent lights began to flicker violently, and her heart raced as a heavy breathing resonated through the hall. It felt closer, almost intimate. She pressed against a wall, heart hammering, straining to listen. Was that Evan's voice she heard? Pleading. "Mom, help." The familiar sound felt like a knife to her gut, a jolt of realization followed by despair. Was he trapped here, too? Could the darkness have followed them, morphing into this new hell? Evan. She rushed down the hallway, the walls closing in around her, shadows stretching and clawing at her from behind as she hurried forward. She felt their cold fingers graze her back, drawing fire from her heart with every inch she moved. Rounding a corner, the hallway opened into an equally stark room. It was empty save for a single flickering screen. Claire approached it, each step feeling like a confession to the shadows. On the screen, static crackled ominously before cutting through to reveal flickering images of her son, each more distorted than the last. He was crying, his face twisted in agony, reaching out for her from behind glass that separated them an invisible barrier. "Mom!" Tears stung Claire's eyes. "I'm coming, Evan." But what could she do? The barrier pulsed thick and surreal, and with each pulse, she felt her strength waning. Shadows danced around the edges of the screen, pressing closer, whispering words of despair. "You can't save him." The voice slithered through the air, wrapped in mockery. It was the same growl she had heard before, cruel and taunting. "You don't belong here. You can't face your own fear." "No." She screamed, but it felt like a whisper in this almost manufactured storm. "I will find him. This ends now." Fueled by desperation, Claire slammed her palm against the screen, heat radiating from her touch. It felt electric, alive, like stepping into fire. The static crackled louder, and the shadows screeched in irritation. Suddenly, the screen exploded with light, engulfing her, her vision blurring into a whirlwind of colors before everything dulled into that smothering darkness once again. For a moment, she was suspended adrift in nothing. And then, she landed hard, gasping for breath once more. The ground was rough against her skin, but she was not alone. She could hear Evan's cries clearly now, punctuated by something harder, more sinister lurking nearby. "Mom! Help! Evan!" But as she scrambled to her feet, a familiar, horrific laughter rang out, echoing all around her. "Welcome back, dear Claire. The game is only just beginning." What had she unleashed? The darkness surrounding her trembled, eager for her weakness. And then she understood, there was no escape. With every ounce of resolve, Claire whispered into the heavy void, "I will find you, Evan, no matter the cost." But was she prepared for what lay ahead? Or would the darkness reveal truths she wasn't ready to face? Claire's heart pounded as the laughter echoed around her, sending shivers down her spine. She felt as if the air itself were alive, charged with a kind of malice that wrapped around her like a serpent. Flashes of Evan's face filled her mind, desperation etched into his young features. Every ounce of anger and fear churned inside her, pushing her forward despite the dread that clawed at her throat. "Evan!" She shouted again, her voice gaining strength, fighting back against the shadows that pulsed with dark energy. She didn't wait to gather her thoughts, she surged forward, muscles straining as she ran deeper into the void. The cries continued, drawing her with a magnetic force. "Mom! Please!" Every sound sent spikes of urgency through her veins. She would not let him down again, not at any cost, but with every step, the weight of the darkness felt heavier, dragging at her limbs, whispering remnants of her past failures. The walls began to shimmer and ripple, losing definition, as if giving way to some unseen terror lurking just beyond reality. She stumbled, catching herself just in time, but the fear surged again, relentless and seething. "Can you feel it?" A voice, smooth and malevolent, slithered through the air. It felt as though it wrapped around her mind like a spider's web. "Every mistake, every moment of doubt, it's all here with you." "Shut up!" Claire screamed, her breath tasting of iron and ash. She pressed on, each step a war against her own fading hope. Yet, the shadows continued to stretch longer, sweeping toward her with a hunger that made her skin crawl. Suddenly, the floor beneath her feet cracked, splintering with a deep groan. She stumbled but caught herself again. The ground pulsed with an unnatural rhythm, a heartbeat echoing through the darkness. Panic surged in her chest. The very foundation beneath her was alive and watching, judging her every fear. Where were the cries? Where was Evan? Just as she thought she might go mad, she saw flickers of light ahead, like distant stars piercing the gloom. She sprinted toward them, her heart racing, determination igniting her energy. Yet, as she drew nearer, the lights morphed into familiar shapes. Images of Evan appeared, laughing, playing, but then they twisted into grotesque versions of joy. His laughter became mirthless, echoed by the laughter of countless others lost within the darkness. "No!" Claire screamed, clapping her hands against her ears to block out the tormenting sounds, but they surged louder, overlapping, drowning out her will. "That's not you. You're not lost." The light flickered out, plunging her into a suffocating blackness. In that void, she felt a pressure like cold hands grasping at the edges of her mind. "Can you hear them?" The voice laughed cruelly, a sound sharper than a shard of glass. "You've failed them all, Claire. They're just echoes now, shadows of what they once were." Images of her past cascaded through her, mistakes laid bare, choices that had cost her Evan's safety. A strangled cry tore from her throat as she remembered. "Stop it!" she yelled, searching for the thread of hope that led to her son. But the shadows closed in tighter, feeding on her regret, her guilt. Dread seeped into her, threatening to smother her. Out of the obsidian dark, she could feel a presence coiling closer, breathing down her neck. "Come and play, Claire. There's always room for one more." In the dark the laughter echoed once more, a mockery of her resolve, and Claire's thoughts became a torrent of urgency. She had to push back, to fight against what this place was trying to extract from her. Just ahead, a faint glimmer flickered, a doorway, edges lined in an otherworldly glow. Hope ignited in her chest, and she ran toward it, determined. "Evan! I'm coming!" But just as she reached it, the door swung open, revealing not freedom but a blinding light that bore down like the weight of the world. And in its fierce glow, Claire caught a glimpse of horrors she had yet to face, a swarming mass of twisted faces, each begging for release. "Mom, don't leave me." Evan's voice cut through the chaos, a lifeline in the maelstrom. The door began to close, and Claire felt the energy shift, the darkness pushing, pulling at her very essence, desperate to reclaim her. "No!" she screamed, lunging forward, but the shadows surged in tandem, pulling her back with relentless force. As she felt herself being torn between the two worlds, a realization sliced through the noise. To save him, she had to confront her deepest fears. Would she dare step into that blinding light, or risk losing him to the darkness forever? With no choice left, Claire charged towards that light, tears blurring her vision, the cries of lost souls echoing behind her. What awaited her on the other side? Would she find Evan, or would she stumble into a revelation that shattered her very soul? The blinding light enveloped Claire, casting everything around her into stark relief. For a second, she felt weightless, as if suspended between life and death. It whispered promises of safety, yet the laughter, twisted and malicious, bubbled up around her like a rising tide. "Mom," Evan's voice echoed, weak yet insistent. The light pulsed, illuminating his face, a mask of fear, his breath hitching as he stared into the abyss surrounding them. Claire's heart sank. She lunged forward, reaching for him, but the light faltered, flickering like an old bulb. The warm glow faded, drawing shadows closer, their talon-like fingers clawing at her flesh. "Evan!" she cried, desperation tinging her voice. "Don't, I can't hold it." Evan faded into a chorus of distorted cries, "Mom! Help me!" The air thickened around Claire, a suffocating miasma of dread, as the malevolent voice returned, now booming, a dark tide rising. "You think you can save him? You're losing him. Just let go." "No!" Claire screamed, fury igniting an ember of strength within her. She forced herself deeper into the light, pulling at the threads of understanding. She felt the weight of her past pushing against her. The very air crackled with pain and regret. "Face your failures, Claire." The voice roared, and the world shifted again. Suddenly, spectral figures began to emerge from the darkness, shadows of people she had wronged. Friends, family, even strangers, all their faces twisted in sorrow and anger, accusing her silently. "You could have saved us," they whispered in unison. Overwhelmed, Claire stumbled backward, her resolve wavering. The truth of their words burrowed into her like shards of glass. Memories of the choices that had led her here flooded her mind, the divorce that tore their family apart, the friendships abandoned, the moments of neglect. "No. I didn't mean for any of this." Tears streamed down her cheeks as she fought to hold on to the light. It flickered again, threatening to snuff out completely. "Evan needs me." With everything within her, she rejected the shadows, focusing on the warm glow instead, as if it were a beacon guiding her through the storm. She pushed past the guilt, forcing her will into a single thought: "I will not lose him." But the figures lunged at her, fingers outstretched, binding her with memories of pain. Claire felt her strength waning, her thoughts muddled under the weight of their despair. "Join us, Claire!" they taunted, their laughter mingling with Evan's cries. The shadows twisted, shifting into forms all too familiar, mirroring her own failures, turning her into the very nightmare she sought to escape. Then, in a moment of clarity, she saw it, a flicker of movement where Evan stood. The faces that tormented her were pale reflections of her past. They were not real. They were shadows of her guilt. Claire drew a deep breath, filling her lungs with determination, shattering their hold with newfound conviction. "You don't define me," she yelled, using every ounce of strength to pull Evan back from the brink. Suddenly, Evan's voice cut through the cacophony, raw and pleading. "Mom! Please!" Somewhere within him was a spark of hope, just waiting for her to grab it. She extended her hand toward him, reaching past the darkness, forcing the light to grow. Little by little, the shadowy figures withdrew, their forms dissipating like mist under the sun's rays. The laughter turned to angry whispers, then silence. For one fleeting moment, it felt like she was winning. She felt the warmth of Evan's presence growing closer, felt the light stabilizing. But darkness does not give up easily. With a sudden rush, the shadows surged, launching at Claire with a ferocity that knocked her off balance. Pain lanced through her body as if the shadows were ripping away at her very essence. "Give in, Claire," the voice hissed, sharper now. "You'll only suffer more. Can't you see? It's futile." Would she find the strength needed to save Evan, or would she succumb to the haunting visions of her failures? With every ounce of her being, Claire prepared to fight, her heart pounding in her chest as the darkness closed in once more. What depths of horror awaited her as she battled the very fabric of her being? Would hope prevail, or would despair consume them both? Claire's emotions twisted in a whirlwind of desperation as the shadows lunged, threatening to snuff out the glimmer of hope. No! She shouted, lunging forward, feeling the raw energy surge through her veins as if igniting the darkness into flames. Evan needed her. She pushed through the pain, reaching deep into herself, drawing on every moment of warmth and love that her son had ever given her. "You're not taking him," she declared, her voice strong and unyielding, pushing every ounce of light into the void around her. With every step toward Evan, she felt the ground tremble beneath her, the shadows writhing and shrieking at her defiance. "Join us, Claire!" They echoed, hollow voices of regret and despair, twisting memories of guilt into nightmares that sought to bind her in chains of sorrow. Yet, against that dark symphony, Claire steadied herself, pictures of Evan playing and laughing flooding her mind, infusing her heart with courage. "Evan!" she cried out again, sharper this time. "Listen to my voice. Remember the times we spent together, the simple things, the games, the laughter. I want to let them take you." Suddenly, in the dim darkness, she saw Evan's figure flicker, caught between the shadows and the glowing light radiating from her heart. "Mom!" he cried out, eyes wide with fear. He shimmered like a candle barely holding out against the darkness that clawed at him. With an explosive surge of adrenaline, Claire sprinted toward him, desperate to bridge the distance. The pulsing shadows surged around, eager to devour her, but her resolve only strengthened. The light amplified, illuminating the terrible shapes etched in anguish which reeled back, snarling. "I am your mother," she shouted, voice echoing with fierce love and determination. "I chose you, and I will always choose you." Evan's expression morphed, flickers of recognition breaking through. "Mom, pull me back!" he screamed, fear etching his features. The shadows recoiled as Claire's light pushed against them, revealing tendrils of swirling darkness that flailed in agony. Each step grew more arduous, but Claire felt strength surging through her as Evan's cries rang out, piercing the oppressive shroud, drawing her closer as if tethered by an invisible thread. "Hold on to me. I'll break this, I promise," she yelled, throwing everything she had into that declaration. Tears streamed from her eyes as she felt her love illuminate the surrounding darkness, bursting forth in a brilliant flash that sliced through fear like a knife. The shadows bubbled, disintegrating as her will surged, redoubling in ferocity. With one final lunge, she grasped Evan's small hand, the warmth of their connection igniting an explosion of brilliance. The oppressive darkness that had sought to shatter them split apart, revealing a tunnel of light, wide and beckoning an escape route from the bondage of despair. "Mom!" Evan gasped, hanging on to her with every ounce of hope he had left. Claire held him tightly against her, willing them both forward, squeezing her eyes shut as the brilliance grew, illuminating the world of chaos that threatened to consume them. "We can do this," she whispered fiercely. "Together." And they soared into the light, embraced by a warmth that chased away the memories of shadowy whispers and deceit. With each heartbeat, she felt the weight of guilt dissolve, replaced by an unwavering resolve, one forged through the fierce love of a mother. When they landed, Claire gasped, breathless and disoriented. They were back in their kitchen, the familiar surroundings bathed in the steady glow of summer lights filtering through the window. The air was sweet with the scent of honeysuckle. She turned in disbelief to see Evan standing beside her, chaos replaced with serenity, wide-eyed and innocent as if the nightmare had never existed. "Mom," he whispered, trembling hands reaching for hers. Claire knelt, wrapping him in her arms, tears of relief cascading down her cheeks. "I'm here, sweetheart. You're safe now." Outside, the sun dipped beneath a horizon painted with hues of crimson and gold, illuminating their world anew. She finally allowed herself to breathe, savoring that familiar rhythm of home, the laughter, the warmth, the light. But in the far reaches of Maplewood, shadows lingered, waiting, plotting in the corners of memory. "Let us lock the doors tonight," Claire whispered, resolute and aware. We're not taking any chances. As she glanced toward the window, the world held a promise of peace wrapped in a deceptive smile, revealing that darkness can wear many faces and sometimes, even in your safest spaces, ominous forces linger, and so, with a heart defined by hope and love, Claire stepped into the next day, aware of her power to stand against the shadows that in a world that could be dark, she would always choose light. Now, folks, this is the moment you need to show your support. If you enjoyed this thrilling conclusion, subscribe immediately to the channel so you won't miss the next exclusive stories. Smash that like button now to help feed the algorithm and spread this incredible tale. Don't just sit there, flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about the ending. I want to hear from you. And oh boy, don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to experience this epic conclusion. Only true fans understand how important it is to support the channel through your actions. Let us keep the story rolling together.